Hey guys, this is Danny Boy. I am back. It has been a while. It's been over a week. I apologize for that. This has been quite the week. For one thing, I spent a great deal of it playing Diablo III and reevaluating that game after patch 1.04. Beyond that, Guild Wars 2 came out, along with Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition, essentially the Dark Souls port for PC. I had great plans for playing both of those games, but as it happens, it's not going to work out, quite frankly. Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition, it's the PC port, and it was ported very poorly. It's a really bad port. The camera seems really bad, and the control scheme seems really bad. It was clearly meant to be played with the gamepad, even on the computer, and that's not going to happen. So it looks like I'm not going to be playing that game, which sucks because it was $40 and that's down the drain. And in addition to that, Guild Wars 2, I get a frame rate of about 15 with that game, despite the fact that my computer is absolutely more than good enough to play that game at max settings. So I absolutely cannot record that game, and I don't know what the problem is. I've updated the drivers and everything else, and I've tried things, but it's not working. And quite frankly, the game doesn't seem to be much better than WoW anyway. Barring possibly the PvP, I'd have to play the game quite a bit more to make a final judgment on that, but I just don't think I'm going to wind up playing it for any prolonged period of time. So there was that. Plus, it was my birthday this week. I was born on Labor Day, so because of the way things switch around, my birthday fell on the day after Labor Day this year. So I was out of town celebrating all Labor Day weekend. Oh, and if you were wondering for whatever reason, I just turned 23. So haven't really had a chance to keep up with my channel for this past week. Again, I apologize, but I do have this now. I have, and just running in the background, by the way, is some Diablo III Inferno footage of Act 2 and a bit of Act 3. I am on GOM in Act 3. I've actually beaten GOM with my friends, and we've kind of reached a roadblock, and I'll get into that rather shortly, but I can tell you that my next major plans involve Borderlands 2 and Torchlight 2. Unfortunately, they delayed Torchlight 2 a while ago, which made me rejoice because that game wasn't then going to come out at the same time as Borderlands 2, but they just announced the release date for Torchlight 2 yet again, and it's nearly the exact same day as Borderlands 2. I believe it's coming out on 20th or something. It's right around the exact same time, so rather unfortunate for me. The release date was announced recently at PAX Prime. On top of everything else, the fact that both of those games are coming out together, but in addition, that week, the weekend of that week, I have a bachelor party to go to, which is going to last at least like 2 days, which is really, really unfortunate. I would like to have at least a straight week to pump out content for those games. I will do as much as I possibly can, but I can't miss that bachelor party. My brother-in-law would be very unhappy with me if I did so. So, a lot of stuff going on. I'm going to have to wind up dividing my time between those two games, which I hate to do, but not much can be done about it. Kind of a series of unfortunate events. But yes, anyway, I did go back to Diablo III, played it for a week or so, bringing the grand total of about 4 weeks into that game. I played it for about 3 weeks when it came out, and then this last week. And I probably put in easily another 20 hours. I played a good deal of Inferno, and I got another 2 characters to 60. I probably put, I believe they started in their 30s when I started playing them again, and then I got them to 60, so 60 levels between the two of them. So at least, like, I don't know, 20, 30 hours, not totally sure, something like that. Enough. Enough for me to formulate an opinion. But things have changed dramatically since I have last played the game a few months ago. Not that the game is unrecognizable. The vast majority of changes are quality of life stuff and tweaks and rebalancing and what have you. The game definitely has changed for the better. For one thing, they heavily nerfed Inferno. It's nowhere near as asinine as it once was. They rebalanced monster health. They made it so that monster damage does not scale when you are in a party, which is phenomenal. When I last played the game, I literally could not group with my friends in Inferno. It just made everything impossible. We were far better off solo than actually grouping together, which completely ruined the game for us. We can now do so, though we definitely can do item runs, or rather magic find runs, much faster solo than when together. In addition to that, they completely removed the invulnerability affix, which is great. That was really, really annoying, very difficult to deal with in certain circumstances because you just could not actually get to the unique. It was often very problematic and very frustrating, so that's good. They also gave clear indications of where desecrate fields are. They made the size of desecrate fields actually equal to the size of the effect. Before, this fields were, the visual effect was smaller than the actual desecration field. It definitely seems like mortars have a much larger dead zone when you're next to them, that they can't shoot you, which is great. And they gave a clear indication of Molten, the explosion when you kill them. There's a big circle now that shows you where it is and to remind you that it's there. I definitely often forgot that an enemy was Molten, especially if I was ranged on Inferno, or even Hell sometimes, because they had so many other affixes that Molten was usually the least of my worries. So I would forget, run in to loot them just by habit at the end, and then die. So that's nice. Unfortunately, there are still some really nasty affix combos and still some examples of fake difficulty in terms of unique mobs and champion mobs and their affixes. Oh, also, before I forget, I believe they nerfed fire chains as well to make them less incredibly punishing for melee. But anyway, you can get Vortex and Molten, or Plague, whatever the green thing is, Plague, Pestilence, something like that, or Arcane, Enchanted, or Desecrate, or you can get Jailer in some combination of those things. And basically this is really unfair to the player, because if you get Vortex into a Desecration field or an Arcane Enchanted area or whatever and instantly die, there's nothing you could have done about that. Say you had a cooldown like Spirit Walk or an invulnerability on your Monk ready, or Leap or something on a Barbarian, or Vault or Teleport or whatever, and that's on cooldown because you'd already used it to get out of the way. Well, you get Vortex, you get jailed over a Desecrate field, Vortex into a Molten or something, and you die instantly. And there's nothing you can do, and it's really frustrating, and it's not real difficult because there's absolutely no skill involved in that instance. You're just screwed. It's just kind of random chance. And beyond anything else, it really pigeonholes you into having to have multiple defensive abilities on your bars on Inferno, and Hell for that matter, basically no matter what, which really reduces build diversity, especially when you can only have 6 abilities on your bars at any given time to begin with. However, I can't really blame them for that, because basically the defensive abilities are either going to be needed or they're not going to be needed. There is some middle ground in making them just give you a larger margin of error, but that's definitely something difficult to balance. So I can understand that, but still, if they got rid of Vortex and Jailer, it certainly wouldn't be, I don't think, bad for the game. It's certainly, or at least if they made it so that you couldn't get Vortex and Jailer plus those ground damage fields that I mentioned, I think it would be better for the game, and it wouldn't necessarily devalue those defensive cooldowns. It just would make them less mandatory than they are, and improve build diversity, and just make the game better for players in general. Personally, I don't think it's very fun being Vortex into something, having there being nothing I can do about it, and instantly dying. I don't think that's very good game design. Beyond that, they definitely buffed legendaries and rares significantly, and just items in general overall significantly. They made items that aren't item level 63 significantly more valuable. By rebalancing their item budgets, they made two-handers significantly better, buffed their damage substantially, but there are still some serious problems. The biggest being legendaries still almost never drop, and that's really discouraging for me, at least. The items that I really care about finding, the ones that I'm going to be willing to repeatedly play the game after I've beaten it after Inferno, or just do magic find runs for, are the legendary stuff. That's what I care about. the powerful items with interesting modifiers and procs. And that of course look badass. That goes for sets too. And if I'm going to go hours and hours and hours before finding one, I'm just not going to play the game, because quite frankly, it's really not that entertaining. Certainly not solo. At least Inferno. Leveling is a different beast, as I've mentioned before. I do not find it fun to search for things to sell and then buy what I want. I find it far more fun to find good stuff frequently and just find upgrades and use it and whatever. So yeah, definitely have not found anything, any legendaries to this day on Inferno, which is unfortunate. Certainly not any level 60 legendaries, just generally crappy low level ones, and even then I can count how many legendaries I've found total since the game's release on one hand. I believe it is 3. After a couple hundred hours of gameplay, which is sad and unfortunate, and I personally don't think very good game design. But yeah, that is still a serious problem in my opinion. They buffed them, but they made them impossible to find, which, when the entire point of the game is loot, is rather unfortunate. And the reason, guys, that they're impossible to find is they want to keep the value of these items high so that they sell for a lot of money on the real money auction house. I mean, that is why they're doing it, which is just poor game design, and it makes me sad. But anyway, moving on. They introduced the Paragon system, which is great. I'm really glad they did that. It gives another carrot on a stick to keep playing the game past level 60, and it's free magic find and gold find, which is great. And I think at max Paragon level you basically wouldn't need to carry any magic find gear. The problem is, though, the Paragon levels take just so long to get. They take so long to actually unlock. It's so incredibly grindy. If you've seen the chart, it's literally going to take like months of grinding. It's just ridiculous. Why they put systems in the game where they're that grindy and put caps on systems in the game where basically only 0.0001% of your player base is ever going to achieve it, I don't understand why. I don't understand the point of things being so grindy. Like, you could have longevity in the game without things being this absurdly grindy and just so far to one extreme. I think things need to be brought way closer to the middle in terms of how long it takes to just get stuff in this game and achieve stuff. I mean, it's a hack and slash game. It's supposed to be a game for shits and giggles and fun with your friends and finding loot and just mindless at times and just good fun. A game you play with a beer in one hand even, and they've turned it into this just, it's such serious business, like this almost esport mentality that I don't get, especially when there's no PvP in the game, which was supposed to be put in the game with patch 1.04 and is still not in the game, which is really disappointing for me. That was going to be, I think, a source of longevity for the game for me. Though the game is so incredibly gear-based that it might have been impossible to compete with people that were willing to pay an exorbitant amount of money for gear through the real money auction house anyway. And I am absolutely 100% not willing to pay a dime for the real money auction house for this game. This is not a free-to-play game. I already paid $60 for it, and it's not a game that's been getting all of this new content to warrant a subscription fee anyway. The whole point of the real money auction house was to basically act as a subscription model to give the developers a source of income and revenue for more frequent patches and for better balance, and above all, for frequent content updates. New acts, new monsters, new story, new bosses, new systems, new skills, new classes, PvP, whatever, stuff like that. And that's definitely not happening yet because the game shipped in such a poor state in terms of the endgame that they had to just spend months reevaluating everything and tweaking things and just getting it to where it should have been when the game released. And honestly, even with all these changes, it's definitely nowhere near enough for me to want to keep playing this game in Inferno. Leveling up is generally really fun, at least through most of Nightmare. Near the end of Hell it starts to drag a bit, but even then, it's still real fun. It's great to get new skills and unlock stuff and whatever, but once you hit Inferno, for me, it just becomes really grindy, not that entertaining. I've already been through the content so many times, it takes just, it's so hard to just find upgrades rather than buy them off the AH. And gold is now, the AH economy, the gold auction house economy is so wonky because of how much gold has been devalued now that the real money auction house is in full swing. Even that is just kind of a mess at this point. Frankly, guys, things have definitely improved, but it's, for me, nowhere near enough. There's so much more they should have done, so much more they need to do. It's definitely, for sure, a step in the right direction, but this is where it should have been months ago, and it should have been better than this months ago, honestly. And again, guys, I know a lot of people dislike this idea that, well, you've put in so much time into this game and whatever, so clearly you really like it. I do like the game, but you have to understand, standards for Blizzard Entertainment are incredibly, incredibly high. What's a success for one company is a mediocre title for Blizzard. I'm not saying this game is mediocre, but it's definitely not up to Blizzard standards. Personally, I still think Diablo II is a way better game than Diablo III. I think leveling is probably better in Diablo III, but it didn't take long to level in Diablo II at all. It was fun in Diablo II. You found uniques along the way, you found set items along the way, and it was way more fun for me to just beat hell and then do magic find runs in that game than it is in this game. Just doing magic find runs in hell with my friends is a lot more fun for me than going through Inferno in this game. And even with all the changes, there's still other problems in the game. For example, just they reused so much content from Diablo 2. They just repackaged so much content. I mean, Act 1 in Diablo 3 is Act 1 in Diablo 2. Act 2 in Diablo 3 is Act 2 in Diablo 2. Act 3 in Diablo 3 is Act 5 in Diablo 2. And Act 4 is new. I really like Act 4. The reason being is because it's new. I've never been to Heaven before. It's a really cool place. I would have liked to have hung out there longer. Kind of saddened me that it was the shortest act in the game, like Act 4 going to Hell in Diablo 2. We have this whole world of Sanctuary, this world that has a name now, Sanctuary, and a map, and everything else, and yet we are continually revisiting old locales. I mean, even the bosses, they redid the Butcher. I mean, yeah, it's totally different from Diablo 1, but it's this nostalgia, this constant nostalgia. And I've been playing Diablo 2 for 10 years. Diablo 2 is fresh in my mind. I don't need nostalgia. I mean, I wanted new. That was the whole thing. I wanted new stuff. Same with Diablo being the final boss. Diablo as the final boss is fine, but he plays... I mean, the boss fight is actually very similar to how it was in Diablo 2. It's just more WoW-esque now, more Raid-esque now than it was in Diablo 2. I mean, Iswal is back. There's just too much nostalgia for my taste. It's just, it was unnecessary. And that's not something that they can fix. That is the game. So, again, that makes it difficult for me to want to play through the game yet again for a fourth time into Inferno, especially with the really bad pacing near the end of Act 2. I think the pacing is horrible at the end of Act 2, where you have to go through multiple mini-dungeons and then go through 3 more at the very end to get the guy's blood, or rather to unlock the Shadow Locks or whatever the hell it was. I've done it so many times, but I haven't listened to the plot in forever. Just dislike that. The tower is like 7 levels total with Ariok Crater, and then the tower at the end of Act 3 takes forever. Act 4 is paced well, Act 1 is paced well. I don't know. I still have gripes, guys, and they're really not fixable gripes. I will more than likely not be going back to this game for a long period of time until they finally add in PvP, and even then, I don't know if it's going to happen. I have high hopes for Borderlands 2 and for Torchlight, but I have definitely ranted and rambled enough. I gave this game essentially in one of my rants like an 8 when it came out. I would still give it like an 8. The improvements are nice, but it's certainly not enough to like bump it up at all, really. This is what it should have been months ago, and they still have a long, long way to go. Step in the right direction, but too little too late, in my opinion. Alright, guys, so that is it. Have a good one, guys.